Be extremely careful what your kids watch on YouTube. Maybe I'm just old. Maybe I just assumed because there was specifically an app called YouTube Kids that it was perfectly safe for my kids to watch. That's a perfectly logical assumption to make. At least I thought so. God, was I wrong. I have my 3 kids, James, who is 9, and the twins, Olivia and Owen, who are 7. Oftentimes they get so wound up and excited that they forget to use their heads. And this time, they really did. Owen was the only one who really tried to talk to me about what he was watching on YouTube, but James would always shut him up. I have to admit, I was guilty of only half listening to what he was talking about. I didn't really care what guy played what game or the conundrums of an annoying British pig. It was somewhat of a relief when he stopped talking about it all. No more pig stories, no more gaming adventures. If anything, he seemed less interested in his tablet in general, more inclined to socialize when I was in the room rather than watch some odd video. Maybe I should have read more into that, but hindsight is 20/20, and at the moment, I didn't think much of it. I only caught a glimpse of the new show he was watching yesterday. I popped into his room to let him know it was time for dinner. Obviously, James was on his tablet, and he was completely absorbed in what he was watching. I was at just the right angle to see what was going on. It was another animated show, not surprising. The stars of this one appeared to be this fluffy white lamb and a black goat with a serious case of resting bitch face. The sheep was preparing a sandwich for lunch while singing in an ear-splitting voice about how it was good to feed others. James jumped out of his skin and turned off his tablet. "Dad, what are you doing in here?" James actually sounded embarrassed, like he was caught doing something he shouldn't have, which is not a look I was not unfamiliar with back in my youthful days. "It's time for dinner, kiddo." "What you watching?" I asked. "Just a show. I'm starved." James shoved his tablet under his pillow and dashed out of the room, not able to look me in the eye. Now that was suspicious. James was quiet, yeah, but he wasn't secretive. I decided to let it go for that night. However, I had the next day off of work, and my concern for my son was starting to overwhelm me, so I broke a dad code D and let myself into James' tablet to check his YouTube Kids history. The show was called Sheep and Goat Creative. It was all James had been watching for literal weeks. I scrolled back and all the thumbnails were of the happy-go-lucky sheep and the clearly unimpressed goat. Sheep and goat volunteer to feed the homeless. Sheep and goat go for a walk. Sheep and goat sail on a boat. Sheep and goat this. Sheep and goat that. It all seemed normal enough, but James's reaction from the night before, it just seemed weird. So I decided to watch the one he was watching last night. Sheep and Goat Make Lunch. It started normal. There was some cheery royalty-free music playing in the background. Sheep's voice was grating on my eardrums as he described his favorite kind of sandwich, filled with butter and anchovies. He piled an obscene amount of tiny fish onto the bread before plopping another slice on top. "Time to eat," he squawked, opening his mouth to take a bite. I found myself thinking, God, I hope that sheep shuts the hell up soon. It was then that the goat, who hadn't really done anything but stand there with no expression, grabbed the sandwich and crammed the entire disgusting thing down Sheep's throat. Sheep's eyes bugged out his skull as he tried to shove Goat off of him, but the goat didn't budge, forcing Sheep's mouth shut so the sheep had to swallow an entire sandwich in one go. Normally in cartoons, this is where we'd see a sandwich-shaped lump go down Sheep's throat. That didn't happen. As he would in real life, Sheep choked. He gasped and gagged, clearly trying to spit the lump of sandwich out of his throat, but he couldn't. Goat went back to sitting to the side like nothing was the matter, now taking the time to make his own sandwich, a much more civilized peanut butter and jelly. Sheep slowly sank behind the counter, where his choking grew quieter and quieter until it just came to a horrid stop. Goat looked up at the camera, and for the first time in the video, he spoke. "See you next time." That was it. There weren't even credits. The video just ended. I felt sick. The choking sounded so real. No wonder James was embarrassed he was caught. He knew he shouldn't be watching things like this. I knew we had to talk tonight about this. But before we did that, I needed to know all I could about Sheep and Goat. So I clicked on another video, the one with them on the boat. Again, it started normal. Sheep and Goat were sailing in the ocean, Sheep caterwauling about some nonsense about how gorgeous the water was. Halfway through the episode, Goat shoved Sheep's ass into the water, where the sheep screamed and cried as he did his best to tread water. But after a few minutes, he sunk like a stone. Once again, Goat looked up at the camera and blankly told us that he'd see you next time, and the video ended. I was disgusted. I clicked on the volunteer video. At first, they were just feeding poor underfed-looking rabbits and chickens, but when the stew pot went empty, Goat tossed Sheep into the pot and shut the lid over him. Sheep screamed as he was burned to death inside of the pot. Once he was dead, Goat opened up the pot and started cutting off slices, tossing burnt wool and rare meat onto the plates of the hungry. See you next time. I hated it. I wanted to stop, but I clicked on the next one anyway, the one where they were going on a walk. I knew what to expect by now. That cheery, stupid music, Sheep's annoying as hell voice grating my eardrums as they skipped down a path and up a hill. Goat just quietly followed along, not speaking, not making any expression. Once they were up there, Goat attacked Sheep. He tackled him to the ground and beat him with a block of wood. Once Sheep was unconscious, Goat grabbed a hammer and nails. This time, Goat actually smiled as he pressed one of the nails right above Sheep's hoof. Goat slammed the hammer down just as my phone began to ring, but I couldn't pause in time to avoid hearing Sheep's blood-curdling scream. I turned off the tablet and swallowed the bile coming up my throat. This was terrible. James needed help. A therapist at the very least, if not a full inpatient stay for juvenile psychopaths. I grabbed my phone and saw it was coming from the kids' school. I answered, trying to ignore that feeling of dread that crept up my spine. "Hello, Thompson residence? Mr. Thompson, you need to come down to the school, right away." My heart dropped into my stomach. "What happened?" "Your son James left the school premises during recess. He brought his little brother with him. We can't find them. Your daughter Olivia said they were going on a walk."